All right. Morning, evening, afternoon. Welcome to the Plug Live podcast. And today we are joined by the man, the myth, the legend, John Haslbauer. John, how are you doing today?
Good. Top of the morning from the other side of the pond over here. Nice to be on with you. We've had plenty of Twitter interaction. You're running the best newsletter in the game. And now we get to talk golf together. I love it. How are you doing?
Well, I was ready to give all the compliments, but that's nice that you that you shone some my way. Yeah, no, I'm doing good. So if I get any figures wrong, it's probably because I haven't had my nighttime coffee. It's currently 11:30 here, and John has very kindly decided to join. So appreciate jumping on. Actually, probably should have clarified before we begin. John, people may know him as at PGA Tout on Twitter. John, I presume that just came about. Just was there any story behind that Instagram handle, or is it just something you came up with one day?
The story is actually that it was XFL Tout, and I don't know if the XFL even made its way to Ireland for you guys to have followed that at all. But that was very short-lived here. It's basically like an NFL spin-off league. And the COVID basically killed the league, and it was a thing for like 2 months. But I was really bored, and I wanted to start a Twitter account and like force myself to follow a new sport and get an edge on it betting because nobody else cared enough to track it. And I recently moved to New Jersey, and New Jersey was a state that it was brand new to legalize betting, and I was living alone. So I was like, I have to be like a smart bettor and like force myself to do it. So I created it. It was XFL Tout. XFL folded 2 months later. I had like a couple hundred followers, where I was basically like following every single person who tweeted an XFL tweet. I would follow them, and then I would like unfollow the ones who didn't follow me back like 2 days later. And that was how I got like a couple hundred followers. Like nobody cared about XFL, so I was just going to try to make it look like people were following me. Those were my humble beginnings, and then that fell under, and June came around, and golf was the first sport back, and I've always loved golf, playing it, talking about it, watching it, all of that. So I was like, that makes sense for me to dive into that sport. So I changed it from XFL Tout to PGA Tout, kept the same handle and everything else. And the rest is history, I guess.
What a story! But I never heard of XFL Tout. Because I remember spotting you for the first time, and there will be golf stats here later in the podcast. But I was always just curious about this. I remember spotting you for the first time and seeing the PGA. It looks like the PGA Tour logo, obviously. And I was like, "What is this? This isn't the official PGA Tour account." And then obviously changed the tour into Tout, and yeah, it's pretty catchy. I think it's caught on a lot.
Yeah, it was definitely an attention grabber. I've gotten a lot of like of app mentions for people who are like cursing out the PGA Tour, retweets from people who thought they were retweeting the PGA Tour. So I think it helped definitely stand up the account for maybe the wrong reasons. But yeah, I'm a marketer, so that's maybe that was all intentional in the end.
I'm just after realizing that the or is beside the T on the keyboard as well. So like if you accidentally were out one night and you hit the T instead of the or, all of a sudden they're tagging you instead of the PGA Tour. So you're probably getting a lot of hate mail at the moment.
Well, that was my hope with the website too, when it used to be pgatout.com. I thought that I was going to get traffic from pgatour.com, and that this was perfect, everything coming together. But it was the opposite. It actually redirected people who were looking for my site. It was like, oh, you meant to go to the pgatour.com. So it would take people who were looking for my site and send them to the other one. So that was an early lesson of things not to do from an SEO standpoint. But fortunately now I'm with the lines, and they are masters at SEO, and people can find my stuff now.
Jeez, I always thought you were like just a big numbers guy, but there really is method to the madness when it comes to it. That's what a story. All right, let's dive into this. First of all, we'll start with what's happened in the last week. So many random storylines. Like Denny McCarthy misses the cut, which I'll have to speak to you about. Bryson's talking about pizza bars. JH Kim goes and wins the Wyndham Championship. Nick Faldo retires. Ashley Buhai, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, goes and wins the KPMG Women's, it's the Open Championship after missing 6 out of her last 12 major cuts. How did you feel about John? Anything in particular stand out to you, or we'll only spend 2 or 3 minutes on this?
Yeah, a lot. And it's funny. I was actually watching the Utah something, the Corn Ferry event, because the Corn Ferry's got some cool down the wire finishes. It's always fun to watch those guys down the stretch because they care so much. So I was watching some of that too. Did not catch much of the women's, but I know that was a good playoff finish. The Wyndham was a heartbreaker with Denny. That was bad. That was a bad call by me. I was really feeling invincible after the Kisner moment the year before, but as it turns out, just because you want somebody to win is not enough for them to even make it through the cut. A cut that literally the entire field made it through except for Denny McCarthy. So that was a tough L. I had Russell Henley in the mix for a minute, and I was going to just give that money away if I won, because I would have been right for the wrong reasons. But regardless, Tom Kim, good win. Hello world moment. Kicking myself a bit for not betting him. I had him short lit there. I was deciding between 4 guys. I was going to pick 2 of them. He was one of the 2 odd men out. So always tough when you're close on a guy and he wins, but it was a good community win. So happy for a lot of guys who hit him, and yeah, he seems like he's going to be here to stay for a while.
I've never, okay, maybe I'm wrong here because I don't look at Twitter that much on a Sunday night, but I'm not sure if I've ever seen so many people like on one person. It happened a few months ago with somebody that I can't remember off the top of my head, but I mean, like, literally the final whistle was blown and it was like tweet after tweet after tweet, told you, 30-1, 60-1, whatever you had him at. It just seemed like everybody had him.
Yeah, I was surprised because 35 to me seemed like a really short number, and that seemed to be where most people bet him at. And I was looking at other people who were 35. In hindsight, like, he's top 40 in the world, shorter than Denny McCarthy on a lot of books. Like, probably should have gone that route if I could do it again. But yeah, it made sense. He's a really accurate off the tee. The putting, nobody could have expected that, but he was a good putter, and we know that this is a course where good putters tend to thrive. So he checked the boxes that you were looking for. A little too unproven for me to have jumped at 35. 45 I would have bet it, and he did open there and I missed it, so that's probably why I didn't bet it. But a good win. A lot of smart people out there who saw it coming. I think Cam Smith at the Open might have been the most popular winner this year, but that may have been a close second.
Brian Kirshner.
Yeah,
he created that narrative apparently, which I actually jumped on as well. So that was a nice little win. There was something there that I was going to mention off the top of my head that I just can't remember, but I just do want to acknowledge this tweet from Justin Ray that since hole by hole tracking started 40 seasons ago, he is the only player to start a PGA Tour event with quad or worse and win the tournament. Apparently, after he made that quad, he was like 200-1. Because I saw somebody sent a screenshot to a group chat, which is wild.
Oh man, I wish I knew that.
I
had room for a 200-1 ad. I didn't have room for him at 35.
Okay, let me do a quick 1 minute dive. I said this before on my podcast, and I'll always say I'm not a massive gambler or I'm not big into placing bets. How do you place these bets? Like, do you say, right, I'm going to allocate a certain amount of units to certain categories, or how does that work?
Yeah, I have it everybody's different. I have it pretty structured. It's 3 units on outrights, 3 units on placements, which are, it used to be matchups. I just call them props in general, but 90% of tournaments, I'm just doing top 20s or 30s or 40s. And those are, so the outrights are 3 units to pay 24 units each. So regardless if I'm betting somebody 10-1 or 100-1, it pays out the same. And that just keeps it structured so that it's also like good when you're sweating to know that, like, regardless of if this guy I bet or that guy I bet wins, I'm going to win the same. So I'm not like rooting for one guy versus the other. So I like to structure it that way. And then first round leaders, I do like a half unit in, and I think it's 10 out on just bombs. I put very little thought into that. That's the most success I've had all year. I have no explanation for why. I think I've hit like 5 or 6 maybe. I've hit a lot. And there's no rhyme or reason behind it. It takes me literally 30 seconds to put a first round leader card together, and I don't even look at like the wave splits, which you're supposed to do. So I can't explain it.
This is just, oh my god, it's plucking numbers out of a hat, which obviously you don't do. But like, do you even look at like, let's say their final round from last week? Do you look at them sort of numbers, or is it literally just whoever you think fits the course? Or you like?
A lot of times there's like a type of player who is a first round leader type. Like half the field just doesn't have it in them to go super low. So I scroll straight to like 60 to 1 or longer, because it's usually going to chop too. And then at that point, like it's not worth it to bet somebody who's like 20 to 1. So I usually want to start looking at like 60 to 1 or longer. And then I'm looking at like, because I bet it every single week. I track it. I know who's like usually up there. So I don't know, guys like Cam Tringale and Adam Svensson and Tom Hoagie, even. These are guys who are like always in the mix on Thursday, but then they just like don't have it to finish out 4 rounds. So it's usually like my default. If I really like somebody, they fit the course well, but it's a good field, or there's just guys that I like better outright, I'll usually just work around it with a first round leader bet.
That's wild. All right, that's the podcast wrapped and finished, because I'm in envy of how good it is. I do just want to acknowledge, I know we mentioned it briefly earlier, so Ashley Bohai won the Women's Open, defeated In-Ji Chun on the 4th extra hole. Yeah, she threw away a 5-shot lead. She's 33 years old, has missed 6 out of her last 12 cuts in majors, threw away a 5-shot lead before beating In-Ji Chun in a playoff. And I will acknowledge, as a true patriot, that Leona Maguire finished T4, which was excellent for her. Personally, big regret not going to Murfield. I saw No Lane Up do such a good job of covering the LPGA, and they do such a good job of covering it and the courses and who the star players are. And I wish I'd made the trip across the pond, but Murfield looks brilliant. It looks.
How far is that trip from you?
So it depends what you're doing. I went to the Open and got a boat, so I had to drive 3. Like I literally went by myself, and I knew like 1 or 2 people going over that I might have met or might not. So 3 hour or an hour and a half drive up to Belfast, about 2 hour ferry, and then 3.5 hours. So it comes around to 8 hours or something like that. But I can get a plane, which I should have done, and that takes that's probably door to door. It's probably 6 hours, I'd say.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. I mean, worth it to get to the Open, though.
Yeah. Yeah. I have it's probably a story for a different podcast. I'll just say it real quick, because I've actually never mentioned it. So when I got to the Open Championship, I had tickets for all 4 days. So I bought from one of my friends who's supposed to be going, who actually moved to America for the summer. So I got there, and I went on Thursday, went on Friday, went on Saturday, and walked up on Sunday, and I scanned my ticket, and it starts beeping, and it goes beep, beep, beep. And your man goes, "Can you stand over there?" So I stand to the side, and he's like, "Try to scan it again." He goes, "You're going to need to go to the ticket office." So I walk over to the ticket office, and I'm chatting to a young guy there who's asking me who do I think is going to win. He's like, "I'm going to call my manager. Just give me a second." And I'm like, "Lads, I've been here for the last 3 days. What's going on?" I turn around 20 seconds later, and there's 8 police officers around me. And I'm like, I thought somebody was making a TikTok, or somebody at home was rang one of the guards in St. Andrews to prank me. And I'm like, I started laughing. I was like, "What's going on?" They're like, "Sorry, you're going to need to come with us." And I've never ever done anything sketchy in my life. So I walk over, and I'm kind of like a little bit nervous at this stage, because I realize how pretty quick it is. And 2 seconds later, a security guard comes up. He takes a photo of me. He holds my face. He takes a photo. He's like, "You're not getting the ticket today. Don't you dare try come back here." And I'm like, lads, there's something seriously wrong. What's going on? So apparently my ticket had been associated with oil protesters that had planned a protest on the 18th green. And I'm like, lads, Rory's a 4-shot lead here. I have to get in and cover this. Like, this is like my dream come true. And the head of the head of security of the RNA comes out, and he's like, you're not getting in. And I am distraught because this is my big day. I'm walking away, and the police officers escorting me out of the place, 2 police officers. And just as we part ways, we walk about 20 meters apart, and he gets a message in his ear. He's like, "Hey, buddy, come back. They're going to try and get you in. They think you're genuine. They don't think you're going to protest," which I had no intention of protesting. Standing there for an hour and a half, and the head guy of security comes back and goes, "Listen, we've gone to the head of the RNA. I'm not sure what your man's name is. They've made a special exemption for you."
Oh.
Like, me just there to watch the golf, and my ticket, like, there was only 3 other tickets in the group that I bought it, and we knew one of them went to a person from Golf Digest and 2 went to another 2 people from home. I just thought, it's never been told, but if you're listening to this podcast, maybe it'd be interesting. I thought it was the craziest thing ever.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so they got some tip that some reseller was giving them all the way to protesters. That's crazy.
So that's my abbreviated version, but like, I had to, like, the stuff I'd go through, I had to show them my phone, I show them my emails, I'd pull up my top to show I have no tattoos of like anti-fuel or anti-oil. It was like the most thorough thing. And like, the security guard coming up and shoving a phone in my face to take a photo with flash on, I could not get over what was happening. But
well, I'm glad it worked out for you. That would have been some trip to go all those miles over and then be turned away at the door.
But I was this close to like being around the corner and never seeing those police officers again, and just thinking I'm done for the day and going to watch it in the pub for the day by myself. Just sick. But yeah, unfortunately it didn't work out. It wasn't the dream finish that I wanted with Rory. But anyways, sorry, John, that's a side story.
That's a good story.
I wanted to get out an audio version because I've sent WhatsApp voice messages about it, and I felt like I should have been on a podcast at some stage. But yeah, we do have a FedEx Cup, the first FedEx Cup playoff to look forward to this week. All right, let's just do this. The FedEx Cup playoffs purse this year is 75. I'll just do this, a tweet from Kyle Porter. It's $75 million total, up 15 million from last year. Sorry. It's $18 million for first. Top 7 all get over 2 million. Top 10 all get over 1 million. Everyone who makes Tour Championship is guaranteed 500k, and everyone who makes the BMW is guaranteed 175k. How do you feel about that, John? Do you think it makes any difference to your viewing perspective, or drop in the ocean?
No, it does. It doesn't change my viewing perspective, and it does come off a little bit hypocritical after all of Jay Monahan's comments about cash grabs from Liv, and then just sort of coming up with more money to throw at limited field events. It's a little ironic, but it's good for the players that there's something to play for in the PGA Tour. Unfortunately, there's a decent crop of people in the playoffs who are going to go to Live afterwards, and they're basically like, oh, I'll get paid even more money, so I'll just wait to go to Live a couple more months. So it doesn't make me any more, like, there's already like a crazy amount of money on the line here, so I'm still like excited to watch it, but I guess the elite players are like gonna be super focused now because there's a ton of money to be had.
Yeah, I feel the exact same. So Liv was actually on, especially the one over in London, that was on a like peak hour time. Like, it was on at like mid-afternoon. We could watch it. And I was just sitting there and watching it, and I had no interest in watching it because whether these guys came last or they came first, they were all getting paid a ton of money, and there's no, like, I've harped on about this for ages on podcasts before, but there's just nothing to play for. There's no prestige, there's no legacy, and people can give out all they want, but at the end of the day, like, that matters a hell of a lot. And just open these purses is just looking after the players, and it should be not, in my opinion, it should not be marketed towards the fans in the way the PGA Tour does. It's always a consistent messaging towards fans saying, oh, hey, we've upped the purse this year, another 15 million. You should like it a bit more. It's like, nobody cares. Just give us a good product, and that's all we want.
Yeah. In any other sport, the overpaid athlete who doesn't need to work for his contract anymore and is kind of past the hump is like the most hated player on the team. Like if I'm a Yankees fan and we paid Giancarlo Stanton, I don't know how closely you follow baseball or anything, but we gave him like a massive contract, and the last 3 or 4 years of his deal, he's going to be not very good and making the most money on the team. He's going to get booed, and nobody's really going to be happy for him if he's struggling. So that's kind of what Live is based on. So I don't think it's great. Like, as you said, like as a spectator or a viewer, I'm not really pulling for these guys. They're already rich. So I'm not like, it doesn't matter to me if they win or not. And it is kind of confusing to follow along so far. So for now, I'm kind of out on it. I don't really see the appeal to bet on it either, but we'll see. That the league seems to be changing every day, so we'll see what comes of it.
Yeah. So the last thing I'll say about just marketing in general is, I think the FedEx Cup would do so, like, people would be so much more interested if they didn't market it as this massive money competition, and they actually marketed it as like a prestigious honor to go and win the FedEx Cup. Because like, wasn't it a few, I don't know, was the Players or the Tour Championship, where Rory's walking off and he's making the dollar symbol sign, and like it just seemed like that's all that they cared about. Whereas like there's no players going around jumping up and down like like they've won a major at the FedEx Cup. And I think that's just because they market it really, really badly, and the fact that it's just massive purses. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, it's hard to manufacture prestige because it wasn't a thing, and legacy comes from history and time, and they basically tried to stand this thing up for people to care about as much as majors. And the only way you can really do that is by just throwing money at it, I guess, or just pumping propaganda throughout the season that this matters a bunch. But the issue that I actually have with the FedEx playoffs is, if you win the North, or it used to be the Northern Trust,
I made that mistake. I need to apologize.
This event or the BMW, you get over double the FedEx Cup points if you were to win a major. And that is problematic because it's become a thing where if you win the Tour Championship, you're the player of the year. And it's very disproportionate to have a good FedEx Cup playoff versus a very good sustained season with success in majors. And that's the reason that Patrick Cantlay won Player of the Year last year, because he won the BMW, whereas John Rahm had a major and won a bunch of events. So it's a little problematic in that sense, because I think the people who vote are just like, oh, he won FedEx Cup, he's Player of the Year, but it's like really disproportionate in the way that they're rewarding wins.
Completely agree. Like, it's a podcast for another day, but Patrick Cantlay winning Player of the Year last year was, in my opinion, a disgrace and should never have happened. And he probably should have gone to Live after it, because that, how could he accept that? No. But honestly, it should have been given John Rahm. But I agree with you. It's the majors are like, these players get so much more hyped up for a major than they do for one of these playoff events. Like,
yeah, 100%.
And I just think it's crazy that they get more from these events. And I actually, you've brought up a good point that if they actually did market, I keep talking about marketing, but like if they actually did market themselves, like a season-long competition, and you go and win the best you go and win the best tournaments and come to the FedEx Cup playoffs, you have a really good chance. And it just doesn't happen like that. You could be standing 20th, win one and get top 10, and all of a sudden you're up within the top, I don't know, 4 or 5 of the FedEx Cup, potentially heading into the final round. And it's like, no one cares.
Yeah, it's basically like a microcosm of why we don't care about Live, because just because you throw a bunch of money at it doesn't mean the stakes are greater than they were at a major. And that's basically the decision that every golfer has to make now. It's like, what am I giving up? And it's just chasing money worth it, blah, blah, blah. So again, that's probably another podcast, but we're in the
We'll be
playoff
sure to
season
have you
now.
on.
So yeah,
All right.
I don't know. It could easily go on a tangent, but I won't.
Yeah. All right. I want you to fill in the blank for me. All right. Blank is your 2022 WGC FedEx St. Jude champion, and you're not going to convince me otherwise. Thank you. Who's that going to be?
Oh man, this has taken a whole new meaning one week later.
I have that like framed above my bed, that little tweet from the Kevin
Oh
Gilbert.
yeah. This went from auto tail to auto fade really quick.
Do you have anyone off the top of your head?
Oh man, I'm actually feeling very lost over the board right now. I would say Sam Burns is a player that I think checks every box that you need at this event. So he's the only bet I've really placed so far. So if you ask me right now, my answer would be Sam Burns.
Okay, great pick. All right, let's talk a little bit about the course. It's 7,233 yards. This is actually from John's The Lines article, which is excellent and is released every so just briefly mention your schedule. I know you do like a few articles for them.
Oh yeah. So in the playoffs, just given the nature of we don't know what the field will actually be until the end of the tournament before, because a certain number of players advance. The playoff articles will go up on Mondays. But in general, it's tournament preview on Sundays, a player write-up, a value plays for DraftKings primarily on Tuesday mornings, and then final betting card on Wednesday afternoons. And that is all on thelines.com.
Super. So every week, every Monday, I read the one that you release on Sunday night, and I know for the playoffs it's Monday. And this is actually all taken from it. So it's 7,233 yards. It's a par 70, 4 par 3s, 12 par 4s, 2 par 5s. The greens are Bermuda. Architect Ron Pritchard. Historical cut line 2 under. Past winners, I'll just briefly mention some of them here. Abraham Anser won at 16 under. Justin Thomas won at 13 under. And Brooks Koepka won at 16 under. What are you expecting from the course this week, John?
I think it'll be definitely more of a test than we've seen the last few weeks. I would say winning score will probably be somewhere around like 14 under, which is a good test. And whenever you're not pushing birdie fest, that puts more of an emphasis on short game and scrambling, which is not a skill set that's particularly necessary for many of the stretches we see on the PGA Tour. So I like golf like that, where if you don't hit a perfect drive, it's going to be hard to hold the greens, and you're going to have to really fight to make a par. But on the flip side, if you do hit the fairways, then the greens complexes themselves are pretty straightforward. They're pretty flat, and they're very true to how they roll. But it is firm and fast as well. So that's a lot of characteristics that we're used to seeing in the Florida swing. So I'm just looking at kind of comp performance of people who typically have more success on the Florida swing on Bermuda courses. It's just a very Bermuda layout from tee to green. So a lot of like gnarly Bermuda rough, which we saw that at the at Sedgefield last week, that it really can be difficult to hold the greens when you're hitting out of the rough here. So big premium on accuracy off the tee. Approach play is always important. A little bit more around the green emphasis than we usually see. And then your Bermuda putters should be able to pop on these greens, but we've also seen, because it's such a true roll, that like lesser putters, like the tee no putt, tee to green guys actually do have a fair shot here.
Yeah, super. Reading through your stats. Actually, I want to just briefly mention comp courses. I don't even need to dive into these, but I'll just mention them just for the podcast. This from your article, I think, John. Pebble Beach, East Lake, Innisbrook, Wailea, Harbour Town, TPC Sawgrass, TPC Scottsdale, and PGA National. Is there any of those in particular that jump out as like the number one comp course this week?
Yeah, I would say East Lake, which hosts the Tour Championship, and that's sometimes a little tricky to pull from because it's always going to be a 30-man field, and it's always good players playing there, so it's hard to really draw who's great there. But Xander, Rory, Billy Horschel, those guys are usually like the top guys at East Lake year over year. So there are guys to look out for. They have the same sort of Bermuda, the exact same champion Bermuda on the greens. Zoysia fairways is pretty unique on the PGA Tour, and they have the same there. So similar scoring conditions as well. I think East Lake is a very good comp. It's just kind of limited in the data we can pull from it. I think Sawgrass is a very good comp, another like kind of Florida region, Bermuda positional, but a good test, mid-teens winner. I think that's very solid. And Pebble Beach plays very differently from this course, but the winners are very strong correlation. So Dustin Johnson has dominated at both. Daniel Berger's been pretty dominant at both. Even like Ches Reavie has had some of his best results at both of these courses. Phil Mickelson has not won here, but he's been like top 10 every time he's played it. So for some reason, a lot of just correlation with those two events. So I am looking at that just to see some like crossover success between those events.
Brilliant. Well, you know a hell of a lot better than I do, so I'm not going to argue. I didn't. Yeah, comp course is something that I can never get my head around. But that's why I always read your articles, because you just give me all of them. I want to ask a quick question here, right? So last week I liked Adam Scott, and somebody brought up the point that, do we want to bet the live golfers? How do you feel about betting live golfers? So I'll just I'll give you like three here. Cameron Smith obviously won his last start at the Open Championship. Hideki withdraw 68, miscut. Adam Scott 76, 37, 15 last three starts. How do you feel about betting? Do you ignore them, or do you place less emphasis on them if you think that they have other objectives in mind?
I would say FedEx playoffs, everyone here like has a job to do, and there's a lot of money at stake, as we say. Even if your mind is set on live, it's probably because of the money. So you're still probably motivated by the money that's at stake now. Like we saw last year with Patrick Cantlay, it just takes one win in these first two events of the playoffs, and you're in prime position to win the thing. So I'm not going to fade anybody because they're on the bubble. If they're playing good golf, I'm still going to be interested.
Okay, super. Thanks for clarifying that. All right, let's get in. I suppose you mentioned Sam Burns already. You think he's your number one. Who would be the second person that you go to? Or feel free to touch on or add anything that you wanted to add to Sam Burns.
From a betting perspective, or just generally speaking, fitting the course?
Let's go betting perspective.
Some other names at the top of the board, and I'm having a really tough time narrowing it down if I take one guy in like the 18 to 20 range, or if I take two more in like 30 range. But Cameron Smith, Justin Thomas, yeah, those are two names that I'm kind of mulling over. I think Tony Finau wouldn't shock me if he continued to keep this tear going. Usually if you see somebody who's stringing together a bunch of wins, but it's because of the putter, you can kind of overlook it. But he's been dominant, really ball striking and tee to green. So it seems like he's just got the ball in the string, hitting it wherever he wants right now. And the putter's not atrocious. So I don't think it's a bad number on Tony Finau, 22 to 1. I've given that some thought. And then in the next tier, you've got guys like Zalatoris and Morikawa. I'm not totally sold there yet. So I think for me, I'll either be starting in like the 18 to 1 range or skipping it entirely and going to like the 40s after Burns.
Okay. So I've seen Cameron Smith pop up on a number of times on Twitter today. And we want to hit fairways out here. Does the accuracy off the tee concern you? That would have been my number one concern, just looking at his, I suppose, skill set.
Yeah, definitely a concern. I don't think it's the same in the way that like at a sedge field, if you're not accurate, you're in trouble. Like you don't really want to be in this rough, but it's not you're not hitting into like super narrow windows, so you can get away with some misses here. Obviously, he has some big hooks for his misses, so that could be a concern. But he won at the Players, and I really do think that if you can get around TPC Sawgrass, you'll be just fine here. And he had a top 3 or top 4 finish, I think, here last year. He was in position to get into that playoff and just had a bad 18th hole. But that proves to me that in worse form last year, he was able to get around this course. So I think he's a good fit. We obviously haven't seen him since the Open, and there's all the live controversy speculation. But he's a Florida guy. He knows Bermuda greens well. He could easily gain 8+ strokes on the greens this week and just win it with his putter at a course like this, I think.
Okay, very fair. Tony Finau is another name that you mentioned, and yeah, he was a player that I liked as well. The only thing that was slightly concerning was the previous history here, where he finished 34th, 65th, 27th, missed a cut, so 0 top 25s and 4 starts. But listen, Tony's like playing the golf of his life right now, and yeah, I don't know if I still. I could get slated for saying this, but I don't know if I still trust him. If you get what I mean, like he's just broke so many people's hearts so many times, and 2 wins is like unbelievable. But I just have like a bone to pick with some of these players. I just can never get to them.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I was very high on him at the Open, and of course he has this transcendent moment where he becomes a different player immediately after that, or really is starting in the 4th round once he was completely out of it. So that's definitely frustrating. And if you want to play devil's advocate, he won the 3M and the Rocket Mortgage with no viable players really chasing him, and it was a very comfortable Sunday in both occasions. So you put him in a position where he's got to take down bigger names. It might be not as easy to three-peat, but then the other side of that is that he also won essentially this event last year, the first event of FedEx Cup playoff. So, he can square up against a field like this. So, there's good and bad. With me, it's all comes down to the putter with Tony. I think he's going to have a great tee to green performance. That doesn't seem like it's going to slow down anytime soon. So it's just a matter of how many putts is he going to continue to hit.
Yeah, and if it helps to settle your mind, he's missed both of his cuts at the last 2 player championships as well. If you're looking for course comps, you're going to kill me if he wins this, and I put you off. All right, okay. Let me ask you a question here. Let me do this. Colin Morikawa, what are we going to do with this? He's 35-1, and I said just Andy on my open previews, like we hear certain players like JT was 22-1 after winning the PGA at the Open Championship, and then Colin Morikawa was 35-1 here, and you just feel like some of these top, I'm not sure what he is, like top number 3 in the world, 4, 8, something like that. I don't know, but you just feel like some of these top players can just spike at any moment, and if they get to a number like 35-1, you should hammer on them. So I just get like his last 2 starts, missed cut at the missed cut at the Open, missed cut at Scottish T5 at the US Open, missed cut at the Memorial. He hits a lot of fairways. He's 40th in driving accuracy this year, and as we know, he's excellent with his irons. I don't know what I want to do with Colin here.
So we were talking about like how much do I look back at the year before, and I did read my St. Jude article from last year just to reground myself in what I was thinking, and I loved Colin Morikawa in the spot last year, so I was not thinking that way when I first did my research, but after looking back and looking at like the reasons why I think he fits, it makes sense. If you are accurate off the tee, which he's not wavered in that department, and your approach is going to be good. If you're Colin Morikawa, forget what all the rumors were about him forgetting how to hit a cut or anything. His strokes gained approach numbers have been just fine. And especially at the US Open where that was speculation. He shot the low round of the day 2 out of 4 rounds at the US Open. He really should have won that tournament. He shot the worst round of the day on Saturday. I know all this because I was sweating him and found every way to not win that tournament. But he's he's really 2 starts removed from a put together game that should have won the US Open. You put him on 2 links courses on the other side of the pond. Who knows? Maybe he just had like a tough little travel situation, or he's just playing kind of golf in a different format. You can give him a pass maybe for those back-to-back miscuts.
So that was exactly my point, is going to the Open Championship, going overseas, as the defending champion of the Open Championship, to the 150 major at St. Andrews. We can't. I feel like a lot of people underestimate how much pressure is on you to go out there and like do your media duties and communicate. And he's still only young, and I think I can give him a pass there as well at the Open Championship. I just I have no idea. I was just going through the betting board earlier. I saw him at 35-1. I'm like, he's killed me before, and he might kill me again this week. But I'm ready to die in that hill, I think.
The popular bets have been hitting at a crazy rate too, and he's the guy who's going to be on a lot of cards at that number. So I'm like kind of talking myself into it just with the way my cards kind of shaping up. I don't know what I'm gonna do still, but it's a really interesting number for sure.
Yeah, as long as you get him in your model. That's our yeah. Oh god, right, I'm gonna be killed. I'll tell you who I have talked myself into, I think, at 35-1 is Sungjae Im. And I'll tell you why. So he's hit 9 top 31s or better in 10 starts at Sanderson, Honda, Valspar, and Tour Championship over the past 3 years. So the course comparison is there. He's coming off the back of 2 T2 finishes at the Wyndham and 3M, where he's gained 17 strokes ball striking altogether. He's 9th in strokes gained off the tee and 30th in accuracy. He's on to Bermuda, and he's 4th in scrambling this year. It just seems like you have the course comp there, the ball striking is there, scrambling is there, and I'm just wondering how many shots he wins this by.
I love Sungjae. I think I will bet him at the Masters every year until he wins one, because I really think he has a great game for it. The only thing that's not to like is the course history. For some reason, like you said, all the comps check out. He's a great Bermuda player, but great Bermuda putter. His form right now might be better than it's ever been coming into this event, so that may not matter as much. But I think that's the only reason that you're getting a good number on. I would still say that's a good number in the low mid 30s, coming off of back-to-back missed cuts. So I'm thinking about it for sure. It's just the course history that would give me cold feet, really.
Right. One more person who's thinking about is Brian Kirshner, who will be joining us in 2 weeks on the podcast, and I'm looking forward to hearing all his picks and his hot takes. But Jay, I was just going through it earlier, and I thought 35-1 coming off the back of 2 second-place finishes. It's like I don't read the betting board every week, but I would have thought 25-1. 35 just seems like an absurd number considering how well he's playing right now, ball striking and short game and everything else. And all right, lads, we're going just a solo single bullet. Let's roll.
I'm not going to talk you out of it. So
we need to get some more of your picks, John, because that's what Brian is looking for. Who else are you looking for down the board? Why can't I speak? Who else are you looking for further down the board?
I'm probably going to bet Billy Horschel. He's a guy I wrote up this week in the article. You always want to play him on Bermuda in those Florida-like conditions. Firm and fast especially is kind of his MO. Just won the Memorial a handful of starts ago. And it's the off the tee that he's really fixed. That's kind of been an issue for him long term in his career, and he's only lost strokes on accuracy in one event in 2022. So that's a really good sign that he'll just avoid the trouble here. I don't know what his irons are going to do. It's really hard to predict with Billy Horschel how good the approach is going to be week to week, but I know that a short game is going to be good on Bermuda. It basically always is. So if you're telling me he's going to keep himself in position and it's just going to come down to how many makeable putts he's going to have, I kind of like that. And he's 55-1 is what I'm seeing on him, which is long enough for somebody who has top 3 course history in this field.
Wow. Jeez, I did not know he was 55-1. That's pretty interesting. All right, let me give you just one. I want to just reverse here for a second and go back towards the top of the board because I've made a note of this. Scotty Scheffler is 16-1, which, am I being crazy? Am I too tired here? Do I need a coffee or am I missing something?
I don't know what to do with Scotty because I talked myself into Scotty and off of Cam Smith at the Open. And I don't think I regret that because he's obviously the world number 1 and he actually had pretty good links history. But I think that was a case where I just, like you said, we got used to seeing Scotty favorite in every field. He's put together some like really head scratching results where he's not playing like the world number 1 the last few tournaments he's played in. And I think that shine is kind of worn off a little bit. I think it's an extremely fair number based on the way he's playing and the depth of this field and like good, but not spectacular course history here. It's not a must bet for me, but it's a sensible one. If anybody wants to just throw 16-1, like I wouldn't talk anybody out of it.
Okay, sweet. All right, let's go further than the board here. I want you to give me one person or 2 people, whatever you think, 1 or 2 people kind of around 50 to 100-1. I know that's pretty wide, but I was trying to just stick out to you.
I think Hideki Matsuyama is worth a outright bet. I'm not sure about DFS. I'm not sure about placements. He's very boomer bust. He had to withdraw through 1 round in his last start, which was like a quote unquote wrist injury, but then he's shooting speed drills, like speed trading, trying to hit like a 200 miles an hour ball speed the very next day. So I think he's fine. It's always anybody's guess with Hideki's health. I think it's a good outright bet because if he's healthy enough to play, it's a perfect course for him. It's ball striker's delight. He's played very well on Bermuda courses. Even Sawgrass has had very good results. TPC Scottsdale, I think, is a pretty good comp to this as well. He's had great course history there too. And he was in the playoff last year. So obviously suits the course well. It's just a question of health. And it's a really discounted number. I'm seeing right around 50 is the best you can get on him. So I'm very interested in that. I think I'm just waiting to see if anybody can give me better information on how healthy he is or is not.
Okay, interesting. I'm seeing him at 35-1 over here, but a lot of times he's get better odds in America. All right, I'll give 2 players that are around 50-1, and then I'll ask you for like 1 or 2 of your outsiders. Joaquin is a person that I'm like struggling with at the moment because I don't think he can get there, but I was just looking him up earlier. He's gained over 5 strokes ball striking in 3 out of his last 5 starts. And the Porter's gained over 2 strokes in 4 starts in a row. And then in his last 4 starts, he's all strokes putting. So he had a hot Porter for 4 tournaments, and in the last 4 tournaments, he's gone dead with it. And he's lost strokes around the green in 4 out of his last 5, but he's finished 17th here last year. I think I've already spoken myself out of him, but are you even half remotely interested in him?
I gave him a thought, but it's inconsistent form. I think if the number was better, I'd be there, but I think there's guys I like more in that range.
Okay, fair. All right, let me give you one more and then I'll ask you for yours. So one person that kind of stood out to me, and this will not be a popular bet, but Tyrrell Hatton has had like a pretty streaky run of form recently. T8, T11, T24 in his last 3 finishes, improving every time. He's gained over 4.6 strokes on approach in 2 out of his last 3 starts. It's been pretty good to Haslbauer with 25th and 39th, and T14 as Sanderson within the last 12 months. Bermuda is his favorite surface, and he hit 41 out of 56 fairways last week, which is obviously not a perfect comparison, but hopefully he's like starting to hit a few more fairways now because he's 163rd in driving accuracy this year. I just thought it was an interesting one at 55-1.
Yeah, I've seen one or two other people talk him up. Not a super popular bet this week, but fits what you need at this course well. Hatton's a guy who we're just kind of waiting to see him turn it on because he was sort of becoming like a prolific winner on the European side. But he has not. Well, he hasn't won on the PGA Tour since the API in 2020. So just need to see a little bit more out of him for me before I bet him outright. But he's gaining steam and he's trending in the right direction. So another guy. There's so many options this week. It's such a good field that there's a lot of guys you can talk yourself into. That's why I'm having so much trouble finalizing a card.
Okay, let's say. Okay, I want you to just say like one or two names off the top of your head, maybe like a reason or two reasons why you like them that are further down the board.
Well,
anybody.
I skipped over Shane Lowry, but at one point I saw 40 on him, which I think is probably gone. So if he stays in 35, I'll probably pass. But he's lost the putter, but everything else has been good tee to green. Really good results here, which I wasn't expecting. I wasn't really thinking of this as like a Shane Lowry course. Basically anywhere that's like hot, I'm like not going to play Shane Lowry because guy doesn't do well in the heat. But apparently there's something about this course that he likes. So I gave that a second look. If he goes to 40, I might find a way to squeeze that on the card. And then further down the board, I think my longest bet this week is going to be Sahith Theegala. I got him at 150. I think he's somewhere around like 120 on most books. This just has the feel of a Sahith course to me. He's good off the tee. If he needs to hit a fairway, he's got a fairway finder in his game. But he can go aggressive when he's in the fairway to generate the birdie opportunities. And you need a crafty short game, and he is a really crafty short game. So I like him on these sort of mid-range, moderate scoring conditions where it's not a birdie fest because that's not going to allow him to gain on the field around the green, but it's not a total grind where he actually can go out there and make birdies. So I don't know. He's never played here before, so it's a guess, but I like the comp, and Sanderson Farms is one that's gotten some comps to this as well with the Bermuda, and he's had a runner up there. So I think it's worth a flyer.
Yeah. I'll just make two quick points. So Shane Lowry I like Shane Lowry in tougher courses. I've said this for the last 2 weeks, but I just don't think he has potential to go and win a birdie fest. But I think like in tougher conditions where and the example I always go back to is like the Masters. Like it was blowing Thursday, Friday, Saturday morning, he's in contention. And then the weather kind of like improves on Saturday afternoon. And I know he finished like fourth or something there, but it just felt like he didn't have the strength over the field that he usually has. Ches Reavie was one that you mentioned earlier, and I'm only after scrolling through the board, and he's had like 3 top 6 finishes here in his last 4 starts, which is like sick. So I think I'm sold.
Yeah, I mean, if you need him to just hit fairways and greens, like he's your guy, and like we were saying in the beginning, this is the type of greens that a weak putter can actually have some success on. He just won the Barracuda 3 starts ago, and he has great course history here. So I think I'm going to be writing him up in my article tomorrow as a nice DraftKings play. And he just won, so maybe there is some win equity still there as a bomb.
For sure. All right, John, here, we're going to do this thing where you have 1 minute, all right? Because this needs to be an Instagram reel that I have to put up. So it has to be less than 60 seconds. And you just say top 20 or not to these 10 players. It's that easy. All right.
Okay.
These are all between 40 and 90 to 1 with Bet365. Victor Hovland.
No.
JH Kim.
Yes.
Neiman.
No.
Horschel.
Yes.
Homa.
Yes.
Hatton.
Yes.
Connors.
No.
Henley.
No.
Wise.
Yeah. Yes.
And to finish, Cameron Davis.
No.
All right. So you, Brian Kirshner, and the model maniac, Byron, are going to have a battle, a duel to see who gets the most right out of 10 guesses. Oh, sure. it doesn't even matter because Brian Kirshner only has like 30 players to pick from. All right, scrap that. I'm going to put it out anyway, and you can see how you do. Maybe he'll do like top 3 or something.
We'll have to, yeah. We'll weight it. We'll go percentage wise, winning percentage.
Yeah. All right. Last 2 questions that are unrelated to this week, but just general golf questions. It might turn into 3 if we have a spare minute. President's Cup. Do the international team have a chance this year? I know this is something that we haven't even thought about that much, but
not a great one. I think the U.S. team is looking really good this year, and well, I will say the President's Cup team hasn't really lost many of its guys. Like the core hasn't left to live yet. But I think the depth is not quite there compared to the U.S. and you've got guys that are going to be on this President's Cup team for the U.S. that weren't on the Ryder Cup team, like Zalatoris, Cam Young, Burns. It's crazy that how good these guys are that weren't on the team last year. And I think they're hungry to basically like audition for their Ryder Cup role as well. So I mean, I think the U.S. is heavy favorites. I like them. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the fact that it's going to Quail Hollow as well, which is kind of like a bomber's course. We saw how good they were at Whistling Straits. I just think that I don't know what Europe or international team has to do to have a fighting chance here, but I just think they are too good. Then that's my follow-up question: is Europe versus international team? Who do you think wins? I know it's just like dependent on the course or whatever, but
I think that the international team has a better roster right now than the European team does. I say that off the top of my head. I was just having this conversation with Andy about what the new Ryder Cup team is going to look like in Europe, and it's still very top heavy. They're going to have Rahm, Hovland, Rory, Fitzpatrick. That's a really good top 4, but they kind of lost the bottom end to live with like Casey's gone. I'm assuming that Justin Rose is going to leave. But yeah, I guess that second tier would be like Shane Lowry, who's like a borderline top tier player. So that's good for a 5th. Tyrrell Hatton. Yeah. Tommy Fleetwood, I am a little bit concerned about him going to live with him skipping the playoffs. So he might be gone. But yeah, they've got decent depth. I still think I think the international team is a little bit deeper. As I talk through this, I feel like the Europe team would probably be a betting favorite in this hypothetical match, but I would lean the international team.
I agree. I don't even know if Europe would be the betting favorites. I should have given this more thought before I asked the question.
I mean, they've got some big guns in like Rahm and Rory and Hovland and Fitz and Lowry. Those are big names, and they've taken big steps up this year. Where like Fitzpatrick was not really that intimidating at the last Ryder Cup, and he didn't do much. But now, after winning the U.S. Open, he's a little bit more formidable.
Agreed. All right, give me one name on a separate topic. Player of the year right now.
Scott. I think it has to be Scotty. It's a 2-man race, Scotty or Cam Smith. It really can't be anybody else. I mean, Tony would have to win like the last 3 events.
Which he could.
I guess he could. I guess Sam Burns could do the same thing. But I mean, Scotty's got the Masters, a WGC, the API. What's his and the Waste Management. Those are big wins against tough fields. And he was in the mix a little bit in at the Open for a bit too. So and he was in the mix at the US Open. So I think he's been a factor in all of the big events. Cam Smith, I mean, players in the Open any other year, you end the century, like any other year, it's his. If he wins one more playoff event, it's definitely a conversation, a debate to be had.
Okay, agree with you there as well. All right, I think that's it for the first Plug Live playoff podcast. John, it's been a pleasure having you on. I know you've already semi-plugged your stuff, but just tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Thanks for staying up late. Hope you get a nice cup of coffee afterwards. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at PGA Tout, and you can find all of my work on the lines. A few articles a week, and a new one coming out tomorrow.
John, you're the man, the myth, the legend. Thanks very much for jumping on, and I'm sure we'll be in touch soon. All right, John. Thanks, man. Bye-bye.